Predator in the Heat. Who killed Kimlyn Tolgyes? Hello, I'm Jay Nickel of Nickel Investigations, and this is an Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. August 1st, 2002, Hamilton, Ontario. The city sweltered under an oppressive heat wave. The kind of heat that clings to your skin, makes a pavement shimmer like a mirage, and turns the night into a restless, suffocating blanket. The kind of heat that makes people careless, more trusting, more desperate for a breath of cool air. That night, a white sports car idled at the corner of Barton and Wellington. The man behind the wheel, young, blond, clean-cut, offered a ride. His name, he said, was Joe. The woman had climbed into the passenger seat, didn't know it yet, but she had just stepped into a nightmare. An hour later, in a desolate Burlington Park, Joe's charming facade shattered. He attacked, his sudden violence as shocking as the humid stillness of the night. She fought back. She survived. She escaped. But 4 weeks later, someone else didn't. On August 30th, 2002, city workers in Kerncliff Park, just 2 kilometers from where that first attack happened, made a grisly discovery. The naked, battered body of a young woman. Her name? Kimlyn Tolgyes. 19 years old. A mother to a 3-year-old daughter. Last seen stepping out of a red pickup truck in Hamilton on August 23rd. And then she was gone. Murdered. Struck in the head with a blunt object. But by who? 200 leads, multiple arrests, a series of attacks and disappearances across Hamilton and Burlington. The launch of Project Advocate, a police task force determined to catch a predator. But to this day, no one was being charged with Kimlyn Tolgyes' murder. Was Joe more than just an attacker? Was he a killer? Or was there another predator in the night, hunting women, using the darkness as his shield? Tonight, we go back to one of Ontario's most disturbing unsolved murders. We piece together the clues, the suspects, and the chilling similarities between Kimlyn's case and the wave of violence against vulnerable women that followed. Who was hunting in Hamilton that summer? Who got away with murder? And most importantly, who is still out there? This is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast, and this is the story of a murder that remains unsolved. Hello, I'm Jay Nickel of Nickel Investigations. This is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Ontario Cold Cases is a gripping true crime podcast that shines a light on unsolved murders, disappearances, and forgotten crimes from across the province and the world. With meticulous research, compelling storytelling, and a commitment to historical accuracy, we bring you the real stories of victims, investigators, and suspects, stories that demand to be heard. Each week, we take you deep into the world of true crime with a packed schedule of episodes. Tuesdays, historical true crime cases, exploring infamous and obscure crimes from history. Wednesdays, the Mick and Mac Mysteries, a thrilling fictional detective series set in 1950s Toronto. Thursdays, World Cold Case Thursday, investigating unsolved cases from around the globe. Sundays, Ontario Cold Cases, the latest episode uncovering an unsolved mystery from Ontario. From high-profile crimes that shock the nation to little-known cases waiting for justice, we uncover the truth, one case at a time. Join us as we explore the dark corners of history and mystery, where every clue could lead to answers and every case deserves a second look. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts and never miss an episode of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. scorcher, a predator, and a murder that remains unsolved. The first day of August 2002 was a kind of summer heatwave that made the pavement shimmer and the air feel like a furnace. By late afternoon, the mercury had climbed to a brutal 34 degrees Celsius. But with the humidity pressing down like an iron grip, it felt closer to 43 Celsius. Even as night fell over Hamilton, the air remained thick and heavy, offering no escape from the heat. Around 10:30 p.m., a sleek white two-door sports car rolled to a stop at the corner of Barton and Wellington streets. The man behind the wheel, late 20s, short blonde hair, white t-shirt clinging to his slim frame, flashed an easy smile. He introduced himself as Joe. The 43-year-old woman who climbed in the passenger seat had no reason to doubt him, at least not yet. As Joe steered the car north, city lights faded in the rearview mirror. Over the Skyway Bridge and into Burlington, he drove with steady purpose, eventually turning onto Kearns Road. That's when unease crept in. The woman watched the darkened road stretch endlessly ahead. She asked him to stop. He didn't. The intersections blurred past, each one an opportunity to turn back, an opportunity he ignored. When the car finally came to a halt, she seized her chance. She bolted. But Joe played it cool. His voice smooth, reassuring. He coaxed her back inside, promising everything was fine. It wasn't. Minutes later, they pulled in the desolate lot of Kerncliff Park. That's when the mask of charm dropped. The man who had been calm, composed, even persuasive, turned violent. He attacked her, the horror unfolding in the oppressive August night. She fought. She survived. At 12:30 a.m., she reached Halton Police, her voice shaking, and she described her attacker. A white man, slim, about 5'10", clean-shaven. But Joe was already gone, vanished into the night. 4 weeks later, on August 30th, Burlington city workers in nearby Kerncliff Park, a mere 2 kilometers away, made a grisly discovery. In the brush, near the Kearns Road entrance, lay the naked body of a young woman. The cause of death? A brutal blow to the head with a heavy, blunt object. Fingerprints confirmed her identity. Kimlyn Tolgyes, just 19 years old. A mother to a 3-year-old daughter. A life cut short. The last time anyone saw Kimlyn alive was August 23rd, around 9 o'clock p.m. She'd stepped out of a red pickup truck on Grant Avenue near Main Street in Hamilton. After that, she simply disappeared. 200 leads. 18 years. No answers. Who was Joe? Was he connected to Kimlyn's murder? Or did another predator stalk the night that summer? The questions remain. The killer walks free. And the case grows colder with each passing year. A life in motion and the shadows that caught up. From the very start, Kimlyn Judy Tolgyes was built for speed. At Bonetto Elementary School, nestled in the north end of Hamilton, she was a force on the track. She could burn through the 800 meters in just over 3 minutes, leaving competitors in the dust. She was my medley partner, and she was pretty fast, recalled a former teammate named Mary in a September 4th, 2002 article in the Hamilton Spectator. She was good. But life has a way of pulling people in different directions. As Kimlyn moved on to Cathedral High School, the friendships forged on the track faded. The girl who once outran the pack eventually disappeared from the lives of those who had cheered for her. In November 2000, she penned a note to her father in Trinidad, scribbling her words in the back of a school photo. Her message was simple, heartfelt, and heavy with longing. Dad, I'm in grade 12 and 17 years old in this picture. I wish you were more part of my life, but I still love you. Love, Kimlyn. By then, the race had taken a darker turn. Her mother insisted to police that Kimlyn was not involved in the sex trade, though she admitted her daughter had taken up exotic dancing at strip clubs. Others who crossed paths with her painted a more troubling picture. A woman who met Kimlyn at the Hamilton Wentworth Detention Center told the Spectator that the teenager was battling a crippling addiction to crack cocaine. A former elementary school friend spotted her walking down Barton Street earlier that year. She barely recognized her. She looked pretty rough, the friend admitted. The owner of a video store where Kimlyn was a regular noticed something too. She was cheerful enough, but I could tell she was not always happy, he recalled. I don't know what it was about her, but she was not happy. No matter how fast she had been as a child, Kimlyn Tolgyes couldn't outrun the streets. She couldn't outrun addiction. And in the end, she couldn't outrun the danger that was waiting for her. Up next, a murder, a task force, and a chilling lead. Murder, a task force, and a chilling lead. The city worker who stumbled across Kimlyn Tolgyes' body in Kerncliff Park on August 30th, 2002, would never forget the sight. The young woman lay naked and battered in the brush, discarded like an afterthought in a secluded spot known as a lover's lane. There was no romance in the crime that unfolded here, only brutality. Word of Kimlyn's murder spread fast through Hamilton Street community. Those who had known her, who had shared meals, stories, and struggles, felt the ripple of fear and grief. Halton police worked quickly to identify her, using fingerprints and a photo provided by Hamilton police. Soon after, next of kin, including her father in Trinidad, received the devastating news. Kimlyn was Halton's third homicide that year. The cause of death, a blow to the head with a heavy blunt object. But the crime itself remained a puzzle. Where had she been killed? Who had moved her body to the park? And why? A dangerous path and a cross-jurisdictional mystery. Investigators traced her last known movements. Sergeant Val Hay, Halton Police Media Relations Officer, confirmed that Kimlyn was last seen either August 23rd or 24th, moving between Burlington and Hamilton. It's not spelled out, but it is understood she did not hang out with the best sort of people. And that's where the investigation is going, Hay admitted, hinting at the dangers Kimlyn had navigated in the final months of her life. Her usual haunts included Barton Street East, between James Street North and Wellington Street North, and King Street East, between East Avenue and Wentworth Street. Areas known for Hamilton's underground world of drugs and survival work. On the night of August 23rd or 24th, witnesses recalled seeing Kimlyn step out of a red pickup truck on Grant Avenue at 9 o'clock p.m., the last time she was ever seen alive. Project Advocate, hunting a predator. The similarities between Kimlyn's murder and the attack earlier that month couldn't be ignored. Both crimes took place in the same area. Both involved a man who seemed confident, calculated. Both women were brutally victimized. With that in mind, Project Advocate was born. A joint task force between Hamilton and Halton Police. The initiative, headed by Detective Sergeant Steve Crabb, was launched to investigate a series of violent attacks against sex trade workers that had begun in January 2001. The stakes were already high, but now, with the murder in their hands, the urgency skyrocketed. The task force expanded its scope, searching for links to two other women who had vanished without a trace. Susan Gurley, 39, missing since November 2001. And Felicia Floriani, 15, who disappeared June 10th, 2002. Felicia, a homeless teen living at Brennan House, had planned to meet a friend that day. She never arrived. It wasn't the first time a girl had gone missing in Hamilton, but the growing pattern was too disturbing to ignore. In next week's episode, we'll dig deeper in the disappearances of Susan Gurley and Felicia Floriani, and what police uncovered during Project Advocate's most chilling discoveries. Up next, a 3-month-old report and a critical detail. A 3-month-old report and a critical detail. Sometimes cases hinge on one overlooked clue, one detail buried in a flood of routine reports. The formation of the task force triggered a memory for a man who'd filed a seemingly minor police report months earlier. In late July or early August, he'd stopped at a Hamilton Police Community office to recount something strange he had witnessed. Around 3 a.m., while stopping at a convenience store, he saw a young woman jump out of a white sports car. She ran up to him, her voice urgent, her eyes darting over her shoulder. "Please stand beside me until that guy goes. He's nuts." He noticed scratches on her throat. But before he could react, the car was gone. And so was she. At the time, it seemed like an unsettling but not uncommon street encounter. As the man drove away, he saw something that made his stomach drop. That same white car. Only now, another woman sat in the passenger seat. A different woman. The report had sat for 3 months collecting dust, but now with Kimlyn dead and a predator on the loose, police had to ask, had they just missed their first chance to catch a killer? Hunting the predators. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to take shape, but police built a profile of the man they believed was responsible. A white male in his 20s, somewhere between 5 feet 7 inches and 5 feet 10 inches tall, slim to medium build, with blonde or light brown hair and blue eyes. He was a smoker, de Maurier cigarettes, and he drove an older, sporty, white 2-door car with a standard transmission. Whoever he was, he knew both downtown Hamilton and the Kearns Road area in Burlington. The question was, did he live in one of those areas? Or was he simply hunting there? Then on June 26, 2003, 2 women barely escaped the same nightmare. A predator on the hunt. The first was a 35-year-old woman picked up at the corner of Wilson and Emerald in Hamilton. As the car left the city and headed toward Burlington, a sickening sense of déjà vu set in. She demanded to be taken back. He refused. As they neared number 1 side road north of the city, she realized she was running out of time. She fought him, clawing and struggling as the car sped forward. Then, with no other choice, she threw herself from the moving vehicle, hitting the pavement hard before scrambling into the bushes. She hid in the dark, heart pounding, as she watched the car slowly cruise up and down the road, searching. Finally, he gave up. The car disappeared into the night. She ran to a nearby house and called 911. Her attacker, around 26 years old, 5 feet 10 inches tall, clean shaven, with red hair. The car, not the sporty white one. This time he'd used a full-size 4-door 80s model car. Police later found that car in Smithville, but nearby, another vehicle had been stolen. Before officers could process the lead, Another attack happened that same night. A woman was picked up in Hamilton and driven to a secluded stretch of Old Guelph Road in Dundas, where she was sexually assaulted. 2 months later, another woman climbed into a van downtown. The driver circled the city for almost an hour before she realized she was in trouble. When she asked to be let out, he blew through red lights, refusing to stop. "We're going to Burlington," he told her. As the highway loomed ahead, he groped her, one hand on the wheel, the other gripping her thigh. When the van finally slowed, she threw open the door and ran, racing toward an apartment building before he could follow. Up next, a suspect in custody. But was he the only one? A suspect in custody. But was he the only one? By October 2003, police had 3 top suspects, narrowed down from a list of 150 persons of interest. On October 31st, they made their first move. Peter Conca, 21, unemployed, from Hamilton, was arrested and charged with forcible confinement and sexual assault in connection to the most recent attack. "We are investigating him for all of them," said Detective Sergeant Steve Rabb, "because the starting premise for this task force is that we believe there are links. It leads us to believe that it would not be unreasonable for us to feel he could be responsible for all of them." For a time, it seemed they found a man. The attacks stopped for 3 months after Conca's arrest. Then, on February 19th, 2004, the nightmare returned. A woman was grabbed from behind, dragged into an alley, and sexually assaulted. She screamed for help. Another woman heard her cries and rushed in, scaring off the attacker. The description was eerily familiar. A white male, 5 feet 8 inches or taller, average build, dirty blonde hair. The very next day, Rabb made a stunning admission to the press. 7 people are now being investigated. For the first time, police publicly acknowledged they were hunting more than one predator. These are not your regular street johns. They're preying on them, hunting them. There are a couple we're looking at as being responsible for the majority of the attacks. Soon after, 23-year-old John Earl Krause, also from Hamilton, was arrested and charged with sexual assault, forcible confinement, theft, and possession over $5,000 in connection to the June 2003 attacks. Another attack, and another arrest. Even after Project Advocate disbanded, the violence didn't stop. In July 2004, a 23-year-old woman was assaulted in a densely wooded area east of Kerncliff Park, off Kearns Road, around 1:30 a.m. By that afternoon, police made an arrest. Alexander Williams, 27, was taken into custody at his workplace in Burlington and charged with sexual assault, break and enter, and choking. Police weren't saying he was responsible for everything, but according to Detective Sergeant Terry Hill of Hamilton Major Crimes, there were behavioral and geographic similarities to other Project Advocate cases. Sergeant Jeff Corey of Halton Police agreed. There are obvious geographical similarities, he said. Despite 3 men behind bars, many still wondered, had police caught all of the predators? Or were others still out there, waiting in the shadows? Were they the only monsters in the dark? By the end of 2004, 2 men were behind bars. But the question loomed. Had police caught all the predators stalking Hamilton streets? On the same day, Peter Conca and John Earl Krause learned their fates. Conca, who had lashed out repeatedly in court, was initially found mentally unfit to stand trial. A forensic psychologist issued a chilling warning. In the event that Mr. Conca's psychotic behavior returns, he runs a fairly high risk of acting out violently. That violence, in my opinion, would likely include sexual violence. Superior Court Justice Alan Whitten didn't mince words. He called Conca a walking time bomb. Conca's sentence? 20 months in jail, after which he was deported to the Czech Republic. As for John Earl Krause, he pled guilty to one of the June 2003 attacks. Though he admitted to driving a woman to Burlington, the case fell apart when the victim failed to testify. Instead, he was convicted for the second attack that day and sentenced to 9 months in jail, tacked onto the 2-year sentence he was already serving for dangerous driving. It might have seemed like the end, but one more name was about to surface. Up next, a predator caught by chance. A predator caught by chance. In 2005, police arrested Albert Goddard, 41, a Hamilton man with a disturbing pattern, luring sex trade workers into his vehicle, driving them to isolated locations, and assaulting them. His downfall? Pure chance. As police escorted one of his victims through the city, she suddenly stiffened in her seat. "That's him," she whispered, staring out the window. She pointed to a car driving past them. It was Albert Goddard, completely unaware that his past had just caught up with him. Police pulled him over within minutes. During the investigation, the first victim was being transported by police when she saw and identified the accused driving his vehicle, said Superintendent Glyn Wyde. Hamilton police dug deeper, investigating Goddard for other unsolved cases. Had he been one of the phantoms haunting Hamilton streets? Had he crossed paths with Kimlyn Tolgyes? Or was there still someone out there, waiting, hunting, ready to strike again? A decade later, a chilling discovery. For years, the Tolgyes murder and the other cases tied to Project Advocate sat in silence. Leads dried up, suspects were either behind bars or beyond reach. But behind the scenes, Hamilton police hadn't stopped digging. They shared intelligence with Niagara police looking for patterns for connections, especially after the arrest of Michael Durant in January 2007. By 2012, Durant had been convicted and sentenced to life for the murders of 2 women. But just when it seemed justice was being served, an appeal overturned the verdict, forcing a new trial. A gruesome find in a farmer's field. Then in April 2012, a break in the case came, but it was a discovery no one wanted to make. In a remote field in Lincoln, a farmer stumbled upon human remains. DNA confirmed the grim truth. It was Felicia Floriani, the 15-year-old girl who had vanished a decade earlier. At a press conference, Detective Sergeant Steve Rabb put the pieces together. All of these incidents seemed to center in and around the time of early spring, summer, and fall of 2002, and it would be obvious to us that there is some sort of link. But when pressed about direct ties to Tolgyes and the suspects arrested under Project Advocate, Rab hesitated. One person had been deported, and the other was in jail in Ontario on an unrelated matter, he admitted. And yet, after those arrests, the attacks stopped. I can't, with absolute certainty, link them to those 8 other incidents, Rab said. Whether or not the public and media attention caused the person responsible to stop, I can't say for sure. It was a chilling possibility. Had they caught the right men? Or had the real killer simply slipped back into the shadows, waiting for the world to forget? Up next, who killed Kimlyn Tolgyes? Who killed Kimlyn Tolgyes? A triangle of green and silence, Whitechapel Memorial Gardens, sits on 63 acres of land between Main Street West and the Chadoka Expressway in Hamilton. It's a place where deer still wander between the trees, where the city's noise fades into the rustle of leaves and birdsong. The Whitechapel at its heart looks like something from a forgotten postcard, a quaint rural sanctuary untouched by time. It was here in this peaceful place that Kimlyn Tolgyes' family and friends gathered to say goodbye. A week after her body was found discarded like a broken thing in the brush of Kerncliff Park. Less than 10 kilometers away, the streets where she had spent her last years told a very different story. A city of shadows, a hunting ground for predators. For serial predators, it had been open season, and Kimlyn had become another name on a list no one wanted to be on. A case without certainty. More than 200 leads, a web of arrests, cases eerily similar to hers. Attacks in the same area, the same patterns, the same brutality. And yet, after all these years, no one can say for certain who killed Kimlyn Tolgyes. Her killer's name remains just out of reach. Maybe he was caught, locked away for something else, his crimes buried under another name, another charge. Or maybe he's still out there, walking the streets, knowing that he got away with it. Either way, one truth remains. Someone, somewhere, knows what happened to Kimlyn Tolgyes. That brings us to the end of this episode of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. All these years, 200 leads, multiple arrests, but still, no justice for Kimlyn Tolgyes. Her killer is still a mystery. Maybe he was caught, locked away for another crime, his secrets buried with him. Or maybe he's still out there, walking free. Someone somewhere knows what happened to Kimlyn Tolgyes. And if you have any information, no matter how small, you can contact Crime Stoppers anonymously at 1-800-222-TIPS or reach out to Halton Police directly. And don't forget, this is just the beginning. Next week, we dive even deeper into Project Advocate and the chilling disappearances of Susan Gurley and Felicia Floriani. What police uncovered during the investigation will shock you and could hold the key to unraveling more than one deadly secret. Make sure you subscribe to Ontario Cold Cases so you never miss an episode. We're available wherever you get your podcasts, on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon Podcasts, and more. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a rating and review. It helps us bring more cold cases to light and keep these stories alive. I'm Jay Nichol of Nichol Investigations, and this has been Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, some cases may go cold, but they are never forgotten.